gemstones. I mean, I've got a couple of them here, and everybody thinks that they want them. And another thing, and this is actually the whole reason I'm making this video, is that when you are buying rough, there is a different supply chain from buying cut stone. So there are two pathways that I can suggest you move forward. If you're buying alone, I would suggest welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Gemology for Schmucks. My name is Peter Nelson, and I'm here to guide you in everything you need to know about gemstones, such as these, and jewelry. Now, I get many questions about whether or not I have rough. And look here, I've got some rough. Now, rough is basically just gemstone minerals that are still in their rough form, hence the name. It could be a well-formed crystal, or it could be a crystal that is all broken up. Everything falls under rough. And that's particularly when we're thinking about gemstones with the intent to cut them and turn them into actual delightful gems. If you want to leave it in its crystal shape, oftentimes we call that a specimen. And specimens are really only valuable if the crystal is well formed and preferably on matrix, or the mother rock that it was growing in. Not always, but it does tend to add value. But of course, the most coveted thing is the crystal itself. Is the crystal actually good? So there are some individuals, of whom I will not mention because they like to get litigious, that like to sell rubbish gemstones and say they're incredibly rare and valuable just because they're large. Clickbait, swipe left. But those of us that are getting into gemstones and want to understand them on a deeper level, especially those that practice gemstone cutting or lapidary, are oftentimes looking for rough gemstones. Because people believe that if you can get the rough gemstone, you have the best potential to bring the best out of that rough. And huzzah, you've added value to the world. Which would be true. But there's one part of it that's not necessarily true. And what that is that there is a skill to evaluating rough, and you need to look at a lot of rough from certain types of minerals and certain deposits in order to understand it properly. If you haven't been through that full cycle enough times, you may not have a good enough skill of forecasting what quality stone will come out on the other side. And that has a whole lot of ramifications on a business angle. Because buying rough, while it can seem much cheaper than buying cut stones, can come with some incredibly expensive drawbacks. What's the percentage of yields that cut stone will come out as relative to the rough stone that you bought? Are you gaining money or losing money? That all comes in through your imagination and ability to project what you think you can see while evaluating the rough stone with a torch, flashlight. If you're wrong, if your estimate of where you would orient the stone doesn't come out quite right for the weight yield, or you orient it in a direction that gives you a different blend of colors, or it's got inclusions in places that you didn't quite recognize were going to be a big problem, and then they turned out they were, then the final value of the stone, after all of that time, could be much lower than you anticipated, which makes it very expensive. So while I totally understand and appreciate the desire to get rough stones and cut them and bring great value, the greatest possible value, out of the stone, that's not always true. In fact, at this stage in history, there are so many stones that were cut like absolute trash. We call them potato cuts. And those stones, even though the crystal is good, because they don't perform well due to poor cutting that was just meant to optimize weight, nobody buys them. They just sit in a display case or in somebody's safe for years, maybe decades, maybe generations. And so one of the great opportunities for cutters, whether you're new or experienced, is to find those potato cuts, see the real crystal that's already there. You have a clear idea of what the color and the clarity is, and what the likely yield is going to be. So it's a lot easier to anticipate your costs from buying that potato cut into your final yield of a well-cut and well-polished stone. The math makes a lot more sense. And another thing, and this is actually the whole reason I'm making this video, is that when you are buying rough, there is a different supply chain from buying cut stones. I am here in Bangkok, Thailand, one of the capitals of colored stones worldwide, but even I do not see all of the rough that comes through this city because the supply chain of rough is different. There are certain individuals that come from gem-bearing communities that bring huge parcels of gemstone rough, and they need to liquidate it as quickly as possible because they have sunk costs. They may not even be the owner of the stones. They may just be a messenger on behalf of the owner of the stones who's keeping the business going back in wherever they are in the middle of nowhere mining stones. These are artisanal miners on behalf of their community. And so while they're out there doing the Lord's work, making sure the money gets back into their community, money needs to move now. They can't afford to wait years and decades in order for these stones to move and to get the investment back into their community. So what happens is when these parcels of rough come to Bangkok, they first go to the people that are in the memory Rolodex who have bought before. These are dealers that can afford to buy parcels of various qualities of rough and then either cut it all or high grade it, take out what they like, and then sell on the other grades to other dealers. And this is why, when you're contacting somebody like me, I can't always help you with specific minerals, because what's going to show up in the market is totally at the whim of the market itself. What's going to come? When's it going to come? What quality? What sizes? How much of it is there? All of these things are specific to fate. And sometimes fate is cruel. So yes, while sometimes I do get my hands on rough, this is not a buffet. If I have rough available to me and I'm planning to buy, what I'm going to do is going to be contacting people on my list. If I can buy a parcel, subdivide, and resell to a variety of cutters in smaller parcels, and I know I can make money on it, then I will do that. But do I really want to sink my costs into a parcel if I'm not sure that I can do that? No. Because the fact is, with gemstones, there is never enough money for everything. Nobody owns all things. There isn't enough liquidity in the world to do that. Which is good news as far as protecting your assets, and bad news from a convenience point of view. Because unlike fiat currencies, our governments can't just print more gemstones and everybody has as much as they want. It's not a thing. So there are two pathways that I can suggest you move forward. If you're buying alone, I would suggest that you come to a place like Bangkok or look around at local jewelers and see what kinds of stones have been collecting in the shoebox in the back of somebody's safe. See if there are any opportunities in disguise as potato cuts that you could recut and resell for a profit. Now, if your little heart is set on buying rough, then I suggest that you get together with other cutters that are interested in cutting the same types of things, pool your money, and buy parcels. And that's going to require building certain relationships with people that supply rough. This is a specialty. People that supply rough typically don't supply cut stones. There may be some other cutters that already are collecting rough that would be willing to sub-parcel out to you some of the things that they have. So you're going to need to network here. Somebody such as myself that is curating fine qualities is not interested in having a huge array of lower qualities that I then have the job of finding somebody else to buy. I buy high value stones in very small quantities and I pay quickly because I don't want to deal with that job. I focus more on high value stones that I can put into jewelry for my clients, and I focus my time and effort on that. And liquidity, because the Lord knows there's always a need for more. You think microscopes come cheap? Not at all. But for those of you that are interested in hearing more about the stories behind the scenes and the pieces of jewelry that I'm making in private, please head over to gemshepherd.com, where you can also contact me directly. Many of the projects that you will see there are for sale first to that list and typically sold before they even come to the greater YouTube public. Otherwise, if you've got any questions or comments, please leave them in the comment section down below. Hit like it, subscribe, tell all your friends about me, and until next time, bye-bye.